From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Hey there, SportsLine on your television. Steve Lehman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5. Plus, we'll have an opportunity for you guys to get in on the phones tonight to discuss several topics. The NFL Combine getting underway this week in Indianapolis. We'll hear from John Robinson, the Titans' new general manager, coming up about that. The Titans obviously making moves. Robinson in charge now. Mike Mularkey, the permanent head coach at this point, and something that John Burton pointed out last night on Sunday Sports Central, I called for a month or two ago, and I know several other people have looked for, is Amy Adams Strunk, the owner, controlling owner anyway, is becoming more of a public figure. She is sort of putting her stamp on what she wants to do here. About 10 days or so ago, the team released on its website sort of a get to know Amy Adams Strunk, get to know your owner piece, which I thought was really well done. The complaint probably is, where was that when she took over the team last March in basically a family coup at the time? Where was that during the season when everybody was begging for it? Those are certainly the complaints, that it didn't come quick enough, that people wanted to hear from her a long time ago. But what they actually did was pretty good. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go try to find it, because she gives a lot of answers about how she grew up in a football household, that she watched her father, Bud, run the team for a long, long time, and it means something to them. She emphatically put to rest the idea that this team is going to be sold. She wants it in their family. They're going to figure out how to not just keep it there, but also make sure that it is a very good team for the people of Nashville. Those were all the things she laid out. And she also went into the hiring process of getting both Mike Mularkey and John Robinson on board. The thought process, the way they went through it organizationally, and ultimately, and this was big, she took full responsibility for the hires. Other people were involved in the interviews and in the conversations. But when it comes right on down to it, she understands that the buck stops with her, and that those decisions ultimately are her decisions. And she owned them. And she'll own whatever happens with those guys. And I think that's what you want to hear from an owner. Now, does that mean everything is hunky-dory and are going to be fixed overnight? Obviously not. We've got to see a lot more than that. But it's a start. It's what you want to hear from your owner, that she's invested, that she understands the frustration of the fans, that she feels the same type of frustration, and here is her plan for making them better. Other things we've kind of learned in recent days, and part of this was she was in town last week and had a lunch and a dinner for Titans season ticket holders where they could come out and hear from her and hear from Mularkey and hear from John Robinson and hear from Steve Underwood. She's also set out some improvements for facilities. They've dug out a bunch of seats over at Nissan Stadium. They're going to try to make that a better environment for fans on game day. Over at the practice facility, they're working on a new locker room there. They're going to eventually put up a new practice bubble, which is long overdue for this team. So she understands that they're behind the times right now, that they are below the curve in the NFL, and that things have got to get better. And she is the person at the top in charge of getting that done. 737-7767. You could talk about Amy Adams Strunk. If any of these measures, any of these conversations, videos, etc., that she has had the last couple of weeks have influenced you in any way and how you feel about her or how you feel about this franchise. Curious on your thoughts about that. We can also discuss the Titans heading into the Combine. Everybody wants to know what they're going to do with the #1 overall pick. It's too early really to know there. You know, do you trade I think they'll certainly listen to people who call. Who are the guys you take if you don't trade and you actually select at number one? What positions are of most interest? What guys are the can't-miss prospects? Well, that's what this is all about. That's what going to Indianapolis and checking out some of these guys at the Combine and going through the interview process, probably more than anything that you see from the drills on the field, is all about. So we're going to find out what they think about those guys after this interview process. And then you get into free agency and March and the new league year and all of that, and you start to see the roster form a little bit. And that's when you get a real idea of what's going to happen come the end of April. Last year, there was a good idea that the Titans were going to go quarterback there. You thought with Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, that was very likely. But if you remember, there were still a lot of questions about the Titans and what they were going to do well into April. Would they maybe go after a pass rushing defensive game changer in that spot at number 2? Would they entertain the trade? I remember doing reports the day of, going on national radio shows the day of, people asking my opinion whether the Titans would be interested in trading, what it would take to get them to trade for that number 2 pick at the time. And while I thought they'd probably select, it was close. And there were times, and certainly days leading up to the draft, where I thought, man, if they get offered too much, they're not going to be able to say no. Obviously, they went with Marcus Mariota, but in a year when it seemed like there were slam dunk choices for 1 and 2, 2 franchise quarterbacks in Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, even then, there were questions about what the Titans would do there. This year, it's way more wide open at the top of the draft pool, at least to start here. And the Titans don't have that need for a franchise quarterback now. So what do you do? What do they do? It'll be interesting. Your thoughts on that? 737-7767 is the number. Also, the Predators north of the border, back-to-back games the next couple of nights. Montreal tonight. They're tied 1-1 in the second period. Then at Toronto tomorrow night. This is a Preds team that is unbeaten in its last 7 road games. They've played very well away from home. And this is a big couple games here. Winnable couple games on the road again to keep piling on the points. And by the way, if it goes to overtime, just turn off the TV. Just turn it off, because you know what's going to happen. The Preds are now 1-10 in 3-on-3 overtime games after losing to the Kings on Saturday night. No team in the NHL has been more harmed by the league's move to the new 3-on-3 overtime format than the Predators. They've lost the possibility of 10 more points now in those overtime games where you get one, but you can't pick up the second point, and you give 2 to somebody else. That's a big deal for a team that is clinging right now to the final playoff spot in the Western Conference. As you look at these wild card races down the stretch, you got to be better there. And when you talk to some of these players, and even Peter Lavioletti's kind of said, look, we don't spend a lot of time working on 3-on-3 hockey. We do the 5-on-5 stuff. We do the power play stuff and the penalty kill stuff. There's just too much to work on that matters for the full course of games to spend a lot of time working on 3-on-3. They might want to start. When you've lost that many points, it is now a huge factor in your season. If they were just 500 in overtime games, if they could get to 5-6 or 6-5 and add 4 or 5 more points, they are in great shape for the wild card at this point. The first wild card, not the second one that they're sort of clinging on to at the moment. And you start to put some ground on the 3 teams at the top of the Central, especially because a couple of those losses are to the Blues. You can flip a couple ones of those around, so you take a couple points from the Blues, you add 5 or 6 points to the Predators tally, and now all of a sudden you're knocking on the door to potentially getting into the 3rd spot in the Central Division, which obviously would be more advantageous than one of the wild card spots. So that's been a huge factor to the Predators' season so far. And look, it's year one of this. You don't know exactly how the roster is going to shake out and how good you're going to be going into something that you've never seen before. And you maybe, as a coach, don't even know how to prepare for it or how to practice it necessarily going into the season. I get all that. But at this point of the season, with 20-some games left, they've got to put some emphasis on it because they cannot afford to keep losing these games, playing great games against first-place Kings, first-place Stars, on the road against the playoff team in Tampa Bay, St. Louis in your division. Lots of these games have been against playoff teams. Teams that, yeah, sure, you love to get the point against them, but what a big win that would be. You want to see that. You want to get those wins, and if you're the Preds, man, start working on it down the stretch here because that can be the difference between getting into the playoffs and being just on the outside, a point or two here or there. You talk all the time about getting the 2 points every game. Well, talk about getting the one extra point in the overtime sessions now. That's got to be important, and you feel the frustration mounting with this team in those sessions that, for whatever reason, they just don't feel as confident when they get into overtime because of the way it's played out up to this point of the season. That's something that's got to change down the stretch. All right, phone lines open. 737-7767 is the number. We can get to your thoughts on any of those topics, plus much more coming up. Phone lines wide open. We'll also hear from Titans GM John Robinson coming up. Stay tuned. You're watching SportsLine on News Channel 5+.